Big Hero 6. Hiro. I'm gonna say that like all the time now. Big Hero 6 is directed by Don Hall and Chris Williams, written by Robert L. Baird, Dan Gerson, and Jordan Roberts. It's very loosely based on the Marvel comics by Stephen T. Siegel and Duncan Rouleau, and this movie features the voices of Ryan Potter, Scott Adsit, Daniel Henney, Jamie Chung, Genesis Rodriguez, Damon Wayans Jr., and TJ Miller. Big Hero 6 is set in the futuristic city of San Francisco, where the young Hiro Hamada, who is a technical and scientific genius, wants to attend his brother's college for robotics and science and whatnot, so he creates these microbots for the science convention. But then tragedy strikes, his microbots are stolen and being used for villainous acts, so he enlists the help of his fellow nerd friends as well as his brother's medical robot, Baymax, to essentially become superheroes and to find out who stole his microbots. Big Hero 6 is really interesting in that it is the first Marvel property to be adapted by Disney into an animated film, and this opens just so many doors, really. For the kids who are not old enough to watch like the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, they finally have their own like superhero movies that they can enjoy, and this really just shows that Disney really is using every single resource they have. But if you're a Marvel fan, don't expect them to really stay close to the comics at all, because I read somewhere that Marvel really gave Disney complete creative control. The directors really intentionally did not read any of the comics that much so they could have an original vision. Big Hero 6 is an absolutely gorgeous movie. It's very well directed, has some great music, and has one of the most lovable characters you'll ever see in a movie, Baymax. 2014 really is just a great year for animation, I think, because when I watched the Lego movie, I was thinking to myself, this is some of the best animation I've ever seen. When I watched How to Train Your Dragon 2, I was saying this is some of the best animation I've ever seen. Then when I watched Big Hero 6, this is some of the best animation I've ever seen, because the scenery in this movie, like the trees, the water, the streets of San Francisco, the buildings and whatnot, they look real. There's no other way to put it. These things really feel like they're there in real life. The attention to detail is staggering. Just every single puddle on the street, every single neon sign, every single smudge of grime on the surface, and the lighting is perfect also. Just the way the sun kind of bounces off different surfaces. Like, on a technical level, this movie is near masterpiece. What's cool also is that the characters in this movie are actually very racially diverse. Like the Big Hero 6 themselves, there's lots of different mixed races in there. And they also have very different powers. And this diversity in powers really allows the animators to, show off like a different bunch of animation effects. Like Wasabi has these like holographic blades that come out of his arms. Honey Lemon has this purse that's filled with these orbs that turn into like different goos and substances. And of course, Baymax himself, like he's made out of vinyl, and it really feels like he's made out of vinyl. Like when he's poked or whatever, like the skin really like kind of stretches and pulls and whatnot, and it's great. But my favorite animation effect in this movie are the microbots, because they essentially work like they can turn into anything that your mind wants them to turn into. And when they create a structure, it really feels like that structure is made out of like a million microbots. And I think that's so impressive, especially when the man in the kabuki mask, the villain in this movie, gets a hold of them and uses the microbots for like mobility and to bounce around the city. I think it really looks really, really cool. It's very diverse the way they use them. Big Hero 6 also sounds just as good as any other superhero movie. Again, the diversity in powers really allows them to make like a different variety of sounds that really all sound very good together. But Henry Jackman's score for this movie is just so good. It's some of the best music I've heard in a movie all year, because it has those really classic superhero triumphant themes in there, but it also mixes this with a bunch of more electronic instruments that really give off that East meets West vibe that San Francisco has, and just makes the movie just feel so much more modern and moves a lot quicker. Speaking of moving quickly, for the most part, this movie is paced very, very fast, especially like the action scenes and the science scenes where they're inventing stuff. And I really, really like how they made the science stuff feel just as exciting as the action stuff through the equal pacing. And in fact, the action starts to feel like a natural extension of the science stuff. And I think that's great to put in the kids' film because, to make science look really, really cool, because science is cool. Just to clarify though, this movie does start out at a steadier pace, which I actually really appreciated, because it reminded me that this movie isn't just a superhero movie, it really is like a Disney movie about family and stuff. And this really kind of slower opening, I really appreciated, because I liked how they didn't just jump straight into the superhero stuff, they were really trying to establish these characters. Hiro's relationships with his brother Tadashi and Baymax are really the heart of this movie. They felt very real, they felt very complex, and Hiro really went to emotional places that I was not expecting him to go, and this really added a different layer to the movie. But much of the dialogue in this movie is actually very funny. It's full of very light humor. It's not laugh out loud, I would say, but it's very clever, especially from Baymax, because Baymax is so focused on healing people that his programming kind of stops him from seeing other things, and it really makes for some really funny situations. But at the same time, Baymax is just full of heart. Really, you really feel sympathy, or at least you really care for this character. Most of the voice actors they got for this movie are like so extremely hyper, and I actually don't really mind that because it helps with the tone of this movie. Especially like Damon Wayans Jr. and T.J. Miller, who play Wasabi and Fred respectively. Like I thought they really delivered certain moments, certain funny moments, and they were very memorable. But also Jamie Chung, who plays Gogo, and Genesis Rodriguez, who plays Honey Lemon, they were both very very likable also. But they really bought the relationship between Hiro, voiced by Ryan Potter, and Tadashi, voiced by Daniel Henney, because it really felt like they were brothers. They won't hesitate to criticize each other, but they do it out of love. They really do watch out for each other. But Scott Adsit really does steal the show as Baymax because that's really his voice on screen. I don't think it's like modified in any way. He really does kind of sound like a robot, and I think that's great because through his voice, it sounds very empty like a robot should, but at the same time, there's this innocence about it. There's this warmth, and it's just so funny, especially when he's low on battery and he sounds drunk. It's also Scott Adsit's voice, and it's great. The directors Don Hall and Chris Williams, I thought, directed this movie so well. Like it really felt like a live action superhero movie in that like the scale was just so big, the action scenes felt so epic because of the sheer imagination that went into every single action scene, and just how much stuff is going on the screen at the same time. It just really warrants a second viewing. Hall and Williams also managed to make San Francisco feel like a living place without really blatantly exploring any of the places in it. But it really felt alive just through visuals alone and just through the use of the environment and the story. I also really like how ultimately Big Hero 6 became a story about family and grief and healing. I mean, it's not as cry your eyes out as, let's say, How to Train Your Dragon 2, but the way they approach it here was actually very surprising, and I thought they handled it quite well. This movie does have a couple of flaws in my eyes, though. For one, I kind of wish the second half would have been a bit steadier paced, not so fast paced, because there were some emotional moments in the movie in the second half that I really thought should have resonated more if they kind of took the time to let it sink in, but they just kept going, so I kind of wish they slowed it down. My bigger problem with the movie, though, is with its writing. I feel like a lot of the dialogue is just a bit too exposition heavy. I thought they could have done it a bit more creatively. And most of the secondary characters are very underwritten, especially like Maya Rudolph's character, who is the aunt of Hiro and Tadashi. I really thought we could have gotten a bit more like family relationship with her. And also the rest of the Big Hero 6, like while they are very likable and they all have their distinct personalities, I really wanted to care for them more because, if you have a superhero team like the Avengers, you really want to feel like they're all part of the same team. But it really is the Hero and Baymax show, and I really wanted to care more about these characters because I like them so much. And again, while I did like how they handled the themes in this movie, I really just kind of wanted a bit more just to really drive the point home. But other than that, Big Hero 6 is actually a really good movie. I mean, it's not the deepest thing in the world. It's very light entertainment, but it's very fun. It's very accessible light entertainment. And this is actually the first Disney movie ever, at least in my opinion, that really kind of begs for a sequel. I mean, forget like Mulan 2 or Pocahontas 2. If any Disney movie needs a sequel, it's Big Hero 6. But what did you guys think about Big Hero 6? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment and let's have a conversation.